this? Okay, so just so everybody knows that I am recording this, everyone's able to just obviously mute themselves as well, so as not to disturb recordings. There are people that join at a later stage. So just to start off, to begin with, I'm going to wish a long life to the Samson, the Conan, and the Sank families. Out of interest sake, just so you all know, it happens to be Eric's English yahrzeit tonight as well. Happens to just fall out that way. It's amazing. Oshama, having Aliyah, may soul be able to shine upon each and every one of us, and obviously onto the entire family. And just as he had the major impact he had over his life while he lived, so too as his soul continues to have an impact on every single one of us, and obviously change and transform the world, and obviously please God help it bring a Mashiach. Just that interesting, this is part of a series that every night has been a different Mishnahs being learned by different rabbis around the world. So we are now going to learn Pirkei Avot's ethics of our fathers. We're up to chapter 11. So I'm personally learning the 11th Mishnah. One thing you need to know about ethics of our fathers, Pirkei Avot. So generally Torah law is generally, or Torah in general, is actually given specifically with regards to laws itself. So it tells you what to do, how to behave, what to do, when to behave, so on and so forth. When it comes to Pirkei Avot, it actually teaches you how to be a mensch. It's got absolutely nothing to do with the idea of laws, how to keep Shabbos at all. It's about how to be a mensch. And each Mishnah, actually generally one Mishnah, sometimes a couple, are given and stated by a specific one particular great sage. And obviously those sages had many things to say, but in Pirkei Avot, they tend to take the greatest thing that was most important to that sage, and they use that of the lesson to come out of that sage. So in chapter 11 of Ethics of Our Fathers, chapter 1, Mishnah 11, the personality we're dealing with is a guy by the name of Avtalion. Now, understand Avtalion, generally the Torah talks about these two brothers, Shmaya and Avtalion. Bit of a history about them. So number one, they were both converts. They were descendants of the famous king Sancherib, the Syrian king, who attacked Judah in the year 548. We're told that they had one of the greatest students ever by the name of Hillel, the great sage Hillel, who actually lived for many years, is actually known and quoted throughout the Mishna and the Talmud on a continual basis. They were the teachers of the great Hillel. And interestingly, the thing about them is whenever Hillel said the word hin, he always said the word in instead. Why? Because seeing as his teachers were converts, they weren't good at pronouncing the gatchel, and never because they never had the capability to pronounce a gatchel hay or chav. And they used to teach it in as a show of gratitude to the teacher. Funny enough, they used to actually use the word in only. There's a story told actually about the brothers once, that always on Yom Kippur, the high priest would go into the Holy of Holies. When he came out, the entire community would lead him out. And in the period of Shmari and Avtalion, who's a great sage, we're going to talk about in this Mishnah, when the high priest was actually leaving the 1 year, the community and congregation were walking out with him. And as they walked out, they saw Shmai and Avtalion, there's two great sages, and the community walked away from the high priest to the sage. And the reason was, he actually was quite a hectic high priest at the time. He wasn't a very righteous one. He didn't really represent spiritually the Jewish people as they wanted. And they saw the sages that walked there. And in order to almost give a bit of a stech, a bit of a hit at these sages, the high priest said, may the descendants of the nations come in peace. And instead of saying of our nation, he said of the nations, almost saying, you guys are converts, trying to be negative against a convert, which we know is totally against the Torah law at the best of times. And Avtalion responded as follows. He said, you might say, may the descendants of the nations come in peace. But his words, he responded, he says, may the descendants of the nations who practice the patience of Aaron the high priest, may they come in peace. May the descendant of Aaron the high priest who do not practice the practice of Aaron, they will not come in peace. Pretty much saying that you got to be a man of peace like the great high priest himself, Aaron HaKohen. Moses' brother was the first of the high priests. Interesting enough, but you'll see later on in Pirkei Avot and Ethics of Our Fathers, the one thing that the student Hillel actually teaches is the idea of case in peace, like Aaron, the high priest. That's a quick history of the personality. The person we're going to teach who gives us lesson, his name is Avtalion. Avtalion was his name. He actually was a man who ran the courts at the time. And the law was that all the judges who ran the courts in the years that were, how it would be is what? That not only would they run and teach in the courts, but they actually had to look after all the orphans at the same time. And if you take his word Av, Talion, his name, and you split it in half, it has the word Av, which means father, and Talion refers to children. He was the father of the flock. Meanwhile, because obviously as the head of the courts and the judge at the time, he actually looked after all the orphans in the town at the same time. So let's learn about the Mishna that this great sage Talion said. So I'm going to just read it in Hebrew and then in English straight afterwards, and then we'll break it down into the real messages. So he says as follows, Talion Omer, Talion the great sage says as follows, Chachamim, wise people, sages, he's Hari b'divreichem, you need to be careful with your words, because Shema tachovi chovat galuf, the signal imkom ma'amarai, because you may incur a penalty of exile based on the words you say and be banished to a place of evil waters. These are his exact words. The Yishtu HaTalmidim, your students will come and drink those words. Habai Machareich, they come after you, Vayamutu, and they will pass away. The Nimtza Shem Sham is Chanel, and you will end up desecrating the heavens. Now, for a great sage, a bit of a hectic concept. So, what does he read? What is the concept behind this Mishnah? So, what I want to do, I'm going to break it down into the actual words and the lessons to me and you. How do we live our lives based on this Mishnah? So, the first thing he says, it says the word Chachamim. Now, Chachamim means wise people or sages. Interesting enough, he explains what is the difference between a wise person and a fool. The first thing is their words. If you see a human being and that person isn't actually verbal or have a narrative of saying something, you can't tell whether that person's wise or not. So the definition of seeing whether the person's wise or not is what they say. So he starts with Chachamim. Don't be shy, be wise, go out and use the words. He's haru b'divreichem, be careful with the words that you use. Meaning what? So often in life, people are manipulating the words of a person. And if you are a leader, and it doesn't mean you have to be a rabbi or a great sage, you're talking to everybody, every single person, we all have the capability to teach and transform. It says, number one, he's haru b'divreichem, be careful with the words that you use. Why? Because if you're not careful with the words that you use, there could be people in the audience, or the people that you're talking to, or the people, the recipients of the words that you're using, can on purpose try and manipulate those words to suit them, to quote you to do something different and lead people astray. Or more important, worse, if you're not careful with the words that you actually use on a continual basis, you can mean something, but if you say it in the wrong tone, or you don't use the right vernacular, you're not literally using the words correctly, people can misunderstand what you're saying and be led astray. But what's critical, he says, he's haru b'divreichem, be careful with your words. The worst thing you can do is now be scared to teach, or scared to tell, or scared to talk, or you're scared maybe someone will be led astray. The Lubavitcher says you've got to make sure, even if you're worried you might make a mistake, even if the people around you that might want to take your words and manipulate them to use them in somewhere else, still go out and talk, still go out and teach, still go out and be who you have to be. Don't be fearful of attempting to try and help other people out. Yes, be aware. Yes, be cognizant. Yes, be sensitive. But don't not try to make a difference because you're scared perhaps maybe somebody will manipulate your word and manipulate what you have to say. There's a beautiful another way to learn those words. It goes as a chachamim, wise people. You want to be wise. You want to become a teacher. You want to become a leader. You want to become living his example. His hari. Be careful of the way you behave, not what you say. Be careful of the way you behave. Be careful of the things you do. Be careful of the things that you act on a continual basis. Why? Because the divreichem, they're going to land up using that against your words. So pretty much practice what you preach. Too often leaders think, I'm going to tell you one thing. I'm going to teach you. You don't understand. I'm different and we behave differently. He says, you want to become a wise person. It's not how much knowledge you have. It's not how clever you are. It's not how genius or how much time you spend learning. It's about how do you behave? How do you act? He's haru if you behave and you're sensitive and you're cognizant of your behavior. But if reichem and you end up living what you preach, i.e. you're doing it, that is how you teach. That is how you make a difference. That is how you transform the world and transform people around you. And therefore, it's the most important thing at the day is how ma'aseh ikar, action is the most important thing. Don't think you can teach and preach and behave differently. So he says, now let's go back. He says, Chachamim, sages, wise people, go out and make a difference. He's harub b'divreichem, be careful with the words you say, to number one, not let people astray, and even more so, not only to not let people astray because they misunderstood you or trying to manipulate you, but make sure it's not only about your words. It's about his harub, it's about your behavior. Because you may incur penalties of exile and be banished to a place of evil waters. So what does it mean? So on a practical concept, if you start leading people astray, in the old days, you're banished and pushed out of the cities. So you're taken out of Jerusalem, out of wherever you might be put into a physical exile out of the community. But the commentator explains this more than that. He says, what's going to happen? You're going to be banished out into a place of evil waters. What's water? So the source of water is rain. Water comes from the heavens down to the earth. What else comes from the heavens down to the earth? The Torah. What else is water represented? It represents the idea of intellect. When you wake up in the morning, what's the first thing you do? You wash your hands. You put water over your hands. When you eat bread, what's the law? We have challah on a Friday night. What do? We eat bread. We break bread. You wash your hands and you make the blessing. Why do you use water over your hands? It's not an idea of clean. Maybe my hands are clean already. I've still got to go do the significance of washing my hands. Why? Because water represents intellect. Water represents mind. Water represents Torah. And therefore the message is, I'm about to go do a physical action with my hands. I need to make sure I'm doing it for the right reason. I'm using my head. I'm using my God intellect. I'm using my morals. That what I'm about to do now with my hands. Am I doing it because it's animalistic instinct? I just want to fill my stomach if I'm eating bread. Am I doing it for a higher, greater purpose? I'm about to start my day in the morning. I'm going to make my day has purpose. I am putting water in my hands to remind me that the water represents intellect. The water represents Torah. It's been put in my hands that every time my hands get involved with anything, it should be done for the right purpose. And then he says, what happens that now use the word water as intellect or Torah or spirituality? He says, should you lead a person astray? Should you not live to the way you preach? You're going to send people on a journey away that they cannot connect to the water of the world, to the spirituality of the world. So it's not it's an exile of physicality being taken out of the town, but rather you're going to take people's souls and the journey within the water of the world, within Torah, within education, and lead them astray and take them away from their potential and capability. And that is a responsibility we have as leaders. As leaders on a day-to-day continual basis, we have such responsibility. Not just that when you're about to give a show, you prepare. And this isn't about religious leaders. Every parent is a leader. Every student is a leader. Every human is a leader to somebody at specific times. And therefore, the actions we do, our behavior, our wording, our everything, defines not just the moment we do it, but it can literally change and transform somebody's entire spiritual journey based on it. And that's what Avtalion said. Avtalion, the father of the children, said what? Make sure what you say, make sure what you preach, be careful with your words, and make sure you live to it. But if not, the yishtu hatalmidim, your students, the people you're assisting, the yishtu will drink. We're still staying in the water headspace. Will drink what you bring, habaim achareichem, that you've given to them, that they came after you, vayamutu, and they will pass away. Not that they will pass away physically, but if you're letting them lead astray and you're not being true to yourself, that people, the students, the people that you are leading, the people that are seeing you will take, absorb, they'll bring into, they'll drink. What happens when you drink? It goes into your system and affects your entire body. Every nerve, every muscle, every limb, it goes across everywhere. You take that in person's entire being and you lead it into a point of a spiritual destruction. And therefore that, when you desecrate the name of Hashem, you desecrate the capability. Avtalion, I think, tells each and every one of the most unbelievable messages in life. We often are cognizant of what we say. We aren't as cognizant of what we do. And if we are cognizant of what we do, we need to be even more cognizant when we do it about what we say, even more so, because we don't know how people are going to absorb it. And if the message, I think, is unbelievable. Every moment of our lives, each and every one of us are leaders. Every moment of our lives is somebody that's watching you, seeing you, and learning from you. As the famous Baal Shem Tov spiritual leader, first Hasidic leader said, that nothing in the world happens by chance. and that we have an obligation. We've got an incredible, almost, we have like an ability and a strength that we can change and transform people's lives in the most incredible ways. Most importantly, how are we going to do it? We need to do it in the positive. How's that done? Work, make sure that you act to the way you talk, and make sure when you do talk, you talk in a way that people don't misread it. And it's so important as a parent, as a teacher, as a rabbi, as a businessman, as a sibling, as a spouse. It's not always about the words themselves, it's often about the tone. It's how it's done. You have the capability, and I'm going to use it in the positive, to change and transform people for the best, most unbelievable way. And Avtalion says, if you're careful from the beginning of how you say it, and you live to what you say, and you're not scared and hold back from teaching and transforming, you genuinely can change the world. And that's the power that we have. And I must say, when I started the share up, I spoke about the Samson Cohen and saying families are obvious, as mentioned, and today is Eric's English yahrzeit, Mahis Neshama, shine for us all. And there's a man, and I'm not going to talk about Eric, I think the entire family, on generations across, have literally lived their lives to help change and transform our world we have it now. That we ask them to be a good betterer, specifically on today, to be a person who represents us in the heavenly world and tell Hashem, Ad Mosa, enough is enough. We need Mashiach. We need it now. We need to unite. We need to be together across the entire world, in the country of Jerusalem and Israel, with the building of the temple, please God, with Mashiach. So it's been an absolute privilege to be able to give the share. If there's any questions or any comments, just before we'll obviously close up. So on that note, thank you very much to everybody. It was a privilege. May we keep learning, keep growing, and thanks for the opportunity.